Well, this is based on a true life story. It's pretty accurate. It's pretty close to the actual story. Although when you see the film, you will be I think people will be surprised to hear that this actually happened pretty closely to the way we describe it happening. And it was. I don't really want to give too much of the plot away, because part of the fun of watching the movie is going to be finding out what happens. But it's very much, I hope, in the vein of the early sort of Ealing comedies. It's very endearing, very sweet, and if it wasn't all true, you would want to take it with a pinch of salt. But in fact, it was all true. It's been an absolute delight making this film. Yes, I wish it was a 10-part series instead of a 2-hour film. I think that I hope they'll laugh in a very gentle way. The humour is very gentle and just comes out of, it's not a jokey thing at all. It just comes out of human behaviour. And I think people are going to be very absorbed by the story and very charmed by these characters. Well, Dorothy is the backbone of the family. She's actually the main breadwinner in the family. It's the bane of her life, the fact that her husband just doesn't. He's a dreamer and an idealist and a socialist and believes in working for the good of mankind, but doesn't particularly believe in working to make money for his family, sort of thing. She, on the other hand, is the practical one, as is so often in families. It's the woman is the practical person. And she's going out and she's working and she's keeping the family going. And dreaming is all very well. And, we all love a dreamer. But the fact is, you do also have to pay the electricity bill and, and be able to buy a loaf of bread. And when we open our film, this family is really on the edge, financially really on the edge. So, let's hear it for the practical people of life as well. Dorothy's husband, Kempton, is indeed a dreamer, but he's very intelligent. He's a working class man, but he's highly intelligent. One feels that if he'd been born into, going to Eton and then to Oxford, he may well have become Prime Minister, but he wasn't born into that that world, that part of society. So he's very, very intelligent, highly committed to his beliefs. So, but unfortunately, he's living in a world, that really doesn't accept that sort of thinking. Well, it's very interesting because actually the big issue that was driving him at the time was having to pay for the BBC. Television was very new. I certainly didn't have a television when I grew up. So it was only for a sort of certain section of society. And Kempton was very upset about the fact that old age pensioners and people coming, maybe injured in the Second World War, because, that wasn't long before, had to pay this license. He felt they should have it for free. So that was his big issue that he was fighting for. And interestingly enough, that issue just yesterday I saw a piece on television. The whole concept of the license is once again in the news, and whether people should have to pay for it, or whether, exactly as Kempton was saying, whether maybe, when you get to a certain age, you don't have to pay for your license anymore. So it's interesting, it's back in the news again. We're obviously an old married couple, and when you're playing, when you have that sort of relationship with someone, it's very important that the audience can believe that relationship, that they believe you're a married couple and you've been married for many years. In fact, I found, with Jim, I just sort of slipped into it. It didn't seem to be any kind of an effort. I've worked with Jim briefly before on a film called Inkheart. But we haven't worked together a lot at all. We don't know each other very well, but it was a delight to get to know him and work with him. Well, the loss of the daughter, as our story tells it, has caused a fundamental shift in this basically happy marriage. Although it has its problems in other areas, but on top of these issues of her constantly worrying about money and how is she going to feed the family, there is this other crack underpinning the marriage, which is the way the two of them have dealt with the grief of losing the daughter, and the mother has just suppressed it and is trying to get over it in that way, just saying you have to carry on, you have to forget about the past. Kempton, her husband, on the other hand, wants to constantly revisit it and indeed writes about it, which is deeply disturbing to his wife because she feels that it's the equivalent of sort of airing your linens in public. Yeah, I've never worked with Roger before. I've obviously admired his films and enjoyed them very much as an audience, but I've never actually worked with him before. But it's interesting. His material, the material that he's so good with, is very similar to him. You know, there's a gentleness and a wonderful human sense of humor, and a sort of wonderful, sort of wise acceptance of life that Roger has. And it manifests itself in the way that he works on set, which is a very peaceful set. It's very, we have fun, we laugh, and we have a grand time, but there's nothing stressful on the set at all. I think the material that he does and the man himself are, they sort of really meld together. I loved the charm of it. I loved the period, before the 70s and the 80s kicked in, and when the world was the Britain that I knew as a young person, was a sweeter, definitely more naive, but also a more innocent time.
Will the defendant please stand? Kempton Bunton, you stole from the National Gallery a priceless portrait of the Duke of Wellington by Goya.
Not very good, is it?
We're convinced that the Goya has been stolen by a highly professional international criminal gang.
Almost certainly a trained commando.
You all right? Bit of biscuit. I can explain.
Shock, yes, I'm shocked. There's a stolen masterpiece in my wardrobe.
For what? Charity. What's he actually asking for?
All people should have free televisual viewing.
I'm living with a madman.
I'm tackling social injustice. I'm like Robin Hood.
You're an idiot.
The taxpayer paid for that painting. They could have given thousands to war widows and pensioners. It's for the greater good of mankind.
Mankind? What about your own kind? How long will you get?
I don't know. 10 years.
You could have told me. We could have dealt with it together.
He is not a thief. He borrowed your Goya to do a bit of good in this world.
Every time someone gets cut off from the rest of us, this country becomes a foot shorter.
人々を思い、そして優しく寄り添った名もなき男の感動の物語。ゴヤの名画と優しい泥棒。